Proposition 10, Expanded Rent Control. Should the current state law that limits the scope of city and county rent control ordinance be repealed, thereby allowing cities and counties more authority to limit rental rates that residential property owners may charge for new tenants, new construction, and single-family homes? "30 years ago, 14 cities, mostly in the highly populated parts of California, adopted rent control ordinances designed to limit the amount and frequency with which landlords could increase their rents to existing tenants. In 1995, the state legislature adopted the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. This law limited the ordinances so that rent on single-family homes and buildings first rented out in 1995 or later could not be controlled, and landlords could raise rent to market rates if a tenant left the rental property. Court decisions determined that limits on rent increases must not be so low that landlords do not receive a fair rate of return on their investments. In other words, the landlords must be allowed to raise rent enough to receive some profit each year, even on existing rent-controlled properties. Renters in California pay 50% more than the national average. About 20% of Californians live in cities that have current rent control ordinances. In the last 2 years, more cities are seeking to establish rent control ordinances. So far, 2 have done so. Other cities that have placed rent control initiatives on their local ballots have not had them pass. This proposal repeals the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act. It allows cities and counties to regulate rents for whatever type of housing property they choose, no matter when it was built or what type of building it is. Cities and counties would have more power to limit how much landlords can increase rents each year. Rent control rules could apply to any type of housing, no matter when it was built. Rules could also make it harder for a landlord to increase rents when a new renter moves in. Local rent control laws would still need to allow landlords to make some money each year. It does not change existing rent control laws. It does not create new rent control laws. The proposition retains the landlord's right to a fair rate of return on their investment. The fiscal impact of this proposition is difficult to predict because it depends on the content of any rent control ordinance adopted and upon the reaction of landlords and tenants to them. If rent control is expanded, it is likely that landlords will reduce the amount of rental housing offered. The value of rental housing would decrease, and some renters will pay less for rent. Landlords have less income from rental housing in that situation. There will be an income on property, sales, and income tax revenues. Overall, the impact on state and local governments will be reduced revenue in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars each year. The losses could be less, or it could be more. Those who support this initiative say that the high cost of rent hurts seniors, family, and anyone with low or fixed income. This proposition will protect them. This proposition will allow local communities to decide whatever makes sense for their rental housing issues. And it is supported primarily by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation on their Fair Access to Housing arm. Those against the initiative say rent control laws reduce the amount of rental property available because landlords will stop renting, and it does not encourage more building, and that this proposition allows the creation of new local bureaucracies with power to regulate rents on all types of residential property, and the opponents are essentially associations who have rental property and various equity firms.